this image came to me, which was I imagined this big, really goofy cartoon character that was trying to look imposing and scary. And it was yelling at me, "You better relax right now or else." And when I envisioned that, I just cracked up laughing because I realized that I had been trying to bully myself into relaxing. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. It's so good to be back here with you. And today, what I would like to talk about with you is this phenomenon that you might be familiar with of always thinking that you have to try harder, that in order to be the best parent or spouse that you can be, you have to try harder, that in order to be a better professional at whatever it is that you do, that you have to try harder, or even that in order to heal emotionally, physically, spiritually, that you just have to try harder. And what I'm going to talk about today is going to be a challenge to that idea that we have to try harder. And I'm sharing this not only as a prompt for you, but also as a reminder to myself, because perhaps similar to you, I often find myself being pulled right back into that trap of thinking that, if I just try harder, things will finally work out, or I'll finally achieve XYZ, or I'll finally feel better about myself. And pretty much every single time, I find that the opposite is true. So it was maybe 5 years ago or so that I first heard one of my mentors in the field of mind-body medicine, Dr. John Stracks, say this phrase. He said, "Don't try harder, try softer." And that phrase really blew my mind. At the time, actually, this might have been even longer ago. I don't know. Maybe it was 6 years ago. But at the time, I was still in progress with my own recovery from chronic migraine. And I had come to Dr. Stracks to speak with him partly as a, a, a collegial mentor and partly as someone who was seeking new tools for my recovery from migraine. And he could see that I was really putting my all into it. I was really putting my all into the recovery. I was reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts on mind body medicine. I was diligently practicing all of the tools. And I was really putting my back into it, so to speak. He could see that I was approaching my chronic pain recovery with intensity And he understood something that I hadn't quite wrapped my experiential understanding around yet at the time, that when we are in a healing process, oftentimes the harder we try, the more we push, the more we effort and bring intensity to the process, the more tightly wound our nervous system becomes. And it can really increase stress, which then fuels symptoms, which of course is, with all of the best intentions, it's exactly the opposite of what we're hoping to achieve. So he said this thing to me, don't try harder, try softer. And when I first heard him say it, I really didn't quite understand what he meant. I think part of me got it intellectually, and it certainly stayed with me. But it wasn't till months later that this whole thing kind of clicked for me on an experiential level. And here's how that happened. I was one day experiencing yet another intense migraine attack. And yet again, I was feeling extremely frustrated with myself and with the process because I had been making progress in my recovery over a course of a couple of years, probably at that point. And then yet I would still feel thrown back into these backslides or flare ups or whatever I was calling them at the time. And I would experience another intense flare of head pain. And I'd get so frustrated and angry, both with this symptom and with myself, and feeling like I was doing everything right. And why was I still experiencing pain? And just really would start to beat myself up about it. And this one day that was happening, and I suddenly had this click. I suddenly put the puzzle pieces together of what that sentence meant. Don't try harder, try softer. And this visualization came to me that was a meta understanding of the dynamic that I found myself in. And this image came to me, which was I imagined this big, really goofy cartoon character that was trying to look imposing and scary. And it was yelling at me. This is a personification of my own inner critic. It was yelling at me, you better relax right now or else. And when I envisioned that, I just cracked up laughing because I realized the humor in what my inner critic was doing to me. And I just felt a whole lot of self-compassion in that moment when I realized that I had kind of, without realizing it, been trying to bully myself into relaxing. I had been trying to pressure myself into relaxing. And so I was sort of trying to like white knuckle my way into relaxing, because I had learned through all of my reading and listening and practicing in the realm of mind body medicine, I had learned that a stressed nervous system is a nervous system that will send off pain signals. And so I knew that I needed to relax my nervous system in order for the pain to decrease. But what I hadn't realized up until that moment is that you cannot pressure, bully, or force yourself into relaxing. It seemed so obvious once I saw that that's what was happening, and I really just had to laugh. And with that laughter came a release of pressure. And with that release of pressure came a softening into gentleness. And over time, certainly not right then in that instant, but over time, as I began to practice recognizing this dynamic, laughing about it to myself, softening toward myself with the laughter, gradually, gradually over time, my relationship with myself softened, my self-talk shifted, and eventually that began to ripple out into a softening of the physical symptoms that I'd been experiencing for so long. And part of that shift that I made in that moment was not only to notice the dynamic, to laugh about it, and to soften, but I also realized that I needed to change my goal. I needed to change the goal that was guiding my recovery process. And I needed to change it from the goal that had been driving my process, which was the goal of getting out of pain, and replace it with a new goal of being kinder to myself, of shifting the way I spoke to myself, and of loving myself regardless of whether I was experiencing a pain flare or not. Shifting that goal from getting rid of my problem to approaching myself with greater love, acceptance, and understanding, that shifted everything for me. And it allowed my healing process to continue to unfold. And over time, I realized that this shifting of goals was something that I could apply in every area of my life, not only to migraine recovery, but if it was, a goal of wanting to feel like I was a better step parent, or feel like I was a better partner to my spouse, or a better practitioner of the work I do, a better business person. In order to allow those processes of growth to unfold in a real, sustainable, and healthy way, I could shift my goal from I want to be better or I want to fix myself to instead the goal of I'm going to stay on my own side no matter how things go, no matter what the outcomes of my actions are. I'm going to stay on my own side, and I'm not going to abandon myself in the process. That shift of goals has helped me in every area of life that I've applied it to. And applying it is not a one and done. It's an ongoing practice of noticing that I'm holding myself to some conditional standard of self-acceptance, that I'm withholding self-love until I meet some external outcome. And once I notice that, reminding myself to shift my goal into loving, accepting, and advocating for myself, no matter how things go and no matter what the outcomes are in the moment. So, dear listener, if there is any of this that you yourself relate to, if you find yourself periodically motivating yourself through techniques like pressure, perfectionism, self-criticism, or that voice in your head saying, you better get this right or else, kind of like threatening yourself with consequences, I really want to invite you to consider this idea of what would things feel like and look like if you were to let go of trying harder and instead see what it feels like to try softer. See what happens if you shift your goal from you better get this right to I am going to be on my own side no matter how things go. And at every twist and turn in the way, I'm going to be there for myself so that I can continue to pivot and regroup and approach the next step with myself on my own side. Before I close out this episode, I would love to hear from you what your interpretation of this saying, "Don't try harder, try softer," sounds like. I am so curious to hear how that sentence lands for you, what questions you have about it, what thoughts you have about it. And I'd love it if you would drop me an email and let me know. Anna@annaholtzman.com. Until next time, I am sending you so much warmth and encouragement. Take good care, and I'll see you again soon. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.